do these things, and every time I try to do these things, it hurts because it seems as if it fails. So long story short, I be the rock for my wife, which is my family, just by pointing her to God constantly and pointing her to what God says about her. It's like, this is what God says about you. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. You're amazing. You're perfect the way you are. And he loves you dearly. And so do I. And that's where my, I guess, stability is. It's nothing else, because like I don't really have anything else to lean on there.
Yeah. And, and again, just thank y'all for just being so personal and sharing these stories, because that's what I wanted to make sure we touched on and talking about health and, like you said, wellness, because I think that's a better thing to it encompasses all of that. Well, not we're just taking care of our physical health, but our mental health, and us as married men just looking out for our wives as well. That's not just all about us. And we've got to be considerate of them. And just see how in both of your lives where you had to, be there for your wives, even though that's what we're supposed to do. But a lot of times it's like a lot of men aren't there, or just be like, yo, you need to just go somewhere, stop it.
You know what else though? It's more than just that type of mental, because that's a very specific case. But I think everybody, or every man, or every family deals with not just that mentally, but making sure that your spouse knows that they're loved, and make sure that they're cared about, make sure that they know that like they're thought of. You know what I'm saying? That's huge. Like physically being able to say like, hey, I love you, you're beautiful, and showing that in a different way. You know how people have different love languages. I think one of my wife's is like physical touch. I don't really know 100% that either, but I'm just trying to love her the best way I can. And like when I think about full like health, I think about this test that one of my mentors does with me. It's called a SPIES test. It's what is it? Social, physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. And then you have to gauge yourself on each of those. Like if you had to gauge yourself from 0 to 20, where are you at? It just forces you to really think about health wise, where am I at in all these different aspects of my life? So social, interacting with people; physical, my actual physical; emotional, intellectual. That deals with everything. And spiritual, you really have to gauge that for yourself and think like, where am I at and what's keeping me from being in that place where I need to be at? And then from there, you can make the changes that you need to make. So it's like all of those things as a husband, you in some way are being the rock. And it's not just a job just for you. It's a job that you work with your wife and with God to make happen, because she's got to know she can depend on you, and you've got to know you can depend on God. And it's just, that's just like the cyclical thing that gotta happen. But
dope. And it also points to this need for the church and how important the body is, because like you said, you're going through that. Who's going to be there for you? Because that's a heavy burden for you to have to carry on your own. And again, just even though we all go to the same church, we all have the same worldview, I think it gives us a unique perspective where we can speak, and I don't want to necessarily say critically, but can speak hopefully objectively and see, hey, this is areas where the church has potentially dropped the ball. Especially because I always think apologetic. I always think how the outside world views, or try to think how they view us, and so I can better communicate with them. Because I think a lot of times people who don't share our worldview, when they look into the church, they view it more as like a courtroom, or like, hey, I come there, I'm just waiting to be judged. When I think the more accurate representation of a church should be that of a hospital, and I think if I'm going to found it in some sort of verse, it would be when Jesus says it's not the healthy that need a doctor, but the sick. And we're all sick. And most of us fail to realize, hey, I'm sick and there's something wrong. And so when people look into the church and they see it, it's full of messed up people, these hypocrites. Yeah, you're right. Because we all need help. This is a hospital. You don't go to the hospital and see the person who's in perfect health and be like, wouldn't you be like, yo, why are you here?
Right.
You wouldn't. Like, it's the people who are sick. And a lot of times, and again, just like it's revealing too much. My wife, and I'm blaming it on my wife, she got me into Grey's Anatomy. So, it's all of her. I don't like the show at all. I just watch it just because of her. But I actually kind of do like it. But I kind of like the show. Show's dope. But you see these people and they come with all these crazy ailments. And it's just like the craziest things in the world. But it's like, if you were to poll the people in the church and see, and I don't want to put nobody out there, but I believe there's somebody in our church who's dealing with cancer. you know, who are dealing with all these afflictions, and it's just like, wow, this is crazy. And not just going based off just physical ailments, but just spiritually, just broken, just a lot of brokenness that's being dealt with. And the purpose of the church is to help to maintain that wellness. It's not for us to be like, you're sick, get out. You know, it's you're sick, come in, you're invited in. You know, and just trying to have that idea, or that cultivate that environment of, hey, we understand that you're sick, so am I. I need you to come in. And that's also been just a struggle for me as well, because I was telling you guys earlier where a lot of times in church we see this community aspect through Acts. You know, the people get saved and you just see they like sharing things and needs. And I think hopefully I'm not misusing the text. We always think like, you know, tangible things. Like if someone was in need of something tangible, but I would think just community, just whatever you needed. Hey, you need somebody to talk. I think one of the biggest things we can do for someone is just to listen to them. It's one of the best things that we can just do is just have someone who just listen to me, you know, just, hey, no judgment, just listen to what's going on. Because like you said, just having these crazy random thoughts, it's real. I asked you guys earlier, because this is something personally that I'm going through, is, you know, you're in real estate, you do, you know, physical therapy. I said, who do you guys have? Do you guys have someone you can go to and not necessarily be a mentor, but someone who you can pick their brain and say, hey, I need some advice. I need, you know, some direction. And each of you said, yeah. And I said, I don't have that. So I'm a biblical studies major, got my master, my MDiv, working on what's called a THM. So it's more of a scholarly degree, but it's another master's. I literally have my oral defense tomorrow. Have no clue what to expect, what's going to happen. And I have no one who I can go to and say, hey, what should I expect? What's going on? And my thesis is at 150 pages, like 130 content. And it's like, I have no one who I can say, hey, can you review this? Can you look this over? What is that? So it feels like this sense of just going through things alone, you know, just very isolated. And I think because of that, I've put unrealistic expectations on people. For instance, our pastor, and I want to make sure I tell him this to his face as well, where it's like I felt like I've put an unrealistic expectation on my pastor because he's the only one who I've seen do what I'm doing, and it's not even what I want to do because I don't want to be a pastor, you know, but he has, you know, a level of theological acumen, and so we can have conversations and it's not going over his head, you know, and things like that. But it's still, I don't have that person whom I can go to, and I kind of elevated him having this expectation that we're going to be so buddy because I've never had that. I got saved later in life, and so I had some friends who I grew up with. I wouldn't call it discipleship, but we went through life together, so we learned from each other. So I learned and I grew. But after we went our separate ways, it's just all on my own, all by myself. So all the stuff that I know is just my own reading, my own studying, this, that, and the third. So it kind of just makes you really isolated and somewhat bitter to a sense, because like I did this, it can make you prideful, like I did this all on my own. Or it's like, no, I need other people to help. But I had this expectation, especially when I came to the church, that like me and the pastor would be like so buddy. But it's like, we've got a pretty substantial church, probably 200, 250, maybe even more than that, where he's not just Brandon's pastor. He's pastor to all these other people. So it's like, how can I have this high expectation? And then the crazy thing to it, it's like you don't even recognize your blind spots, because I literally get to see, you know, our pastor maybe for an hour once a week because I do group exegesis. And granted, it's in a different type of setting. It's not necessarily a one-on-one thing. We're helping prepare for, you know, the sermon. But how many people can say that? How many people can say, hey, I get to see the pastor at least for an hour a week? Not too many people. But in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm expecting more from him. And it's like, it's easy just to feel like closed off, because it's like, who do I have who I can go to? You know, who do I have? And I think a lot of it attributes to, you know, us being busy. You know, just running around, just ripping and running, and just so much going on, where it's very unhealthy, because I think the church, we are supposed to be invested in each other's lives. Because if we're going to be honest, a lot of times we cheat each other is just for that moment, beginning and end of service, high and by.
Yeah.
Now we have community groups, granted, but even with that, it's like, I know those in my community group. There's people who like, I never seen you before.
Right, yeah.
Like, man, Rebecca told the story, and I'm sorry to put your business out there, but they were going to this church for like 7 years, and it was a pretty big church, and they were leaving Kentucky to come here, and they met the pastor. I guess they bumped into him, and he was like, hey, is this your first time? Like, had no clue that they were members of the church. And it's so easy to get lost in churches like that, where it's just like, you know, there's no real connection or anything like that. And so I don't know if you guys had anything y'all can relate, but it's just needing to vent and just get that out, because it's like, man, you know, I'm occupying a space, because like you guys say, hey, you're doing the podcast, you're doing this. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue. I'm just on the fly, just winging it, you know. And so it's just like, you know, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help, and a lot of times just feeling isolated, you know. And, you know, not wanting it to affect your relationship with your wife and all these other relationships as well. But it's like, man, that's the purpose of the church, but yet realizing, seeing how the church has dropped the ball too. So have you guys, I guess, witnessed that? I guess that'll be my question. Have you guys like witnessed how the church has dropped the ball, or better yet, so either have you seen them drop the ball, or where areas where you've seen, you know, the church truly living out what it was intended to do as far as wellness and taking care of people?
I think I've only been a part of like 3 churches. Yeah, so Vision, my church back at home, and I think one in NC State just for a little bit. But I don't really feel like I've seen a church fully take care of that. I feel like Vision's headed that way, you know, because talking more about, you know, people's mental, making sure that, you know, we even had what didn't Cody do like a
Yo, my world don't stop when the beats commence. Said I'm climbing up this ladder just to get over this fence and run far, far away from the games people play. In this melancholy modern day music Malay, touche. Pussycats with lives to spare that kick, you know, in your heart, nice as hell. Yeah, be aware, beware. I hate to see you less a liver or worse. Polar bear, winter time, catch the river. Now that's cold, and like that, now that's old. Didn't buy the last copy of this, now that's old. It's the pepper on your salt, my dudes, I grind it out. And the answer to the questions of life, I find it out. With that stress, I walk with access. Be he who Max says, with simple blackness. Cause in the end, God bless us, which is so profound. So I stick to my guns. Urban soul be the sound, and y'all do it.
What you talking about? Got me walking out.